My name is Sarah, and I'm 31 years old. As I write this, I'm sitting in my car outside the Grand Ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Chicago, watching through the window as 150 of our closest friends and family members arrive for what they think is our 5th wedding anniversary celebration. They're dressed in their finest evening wear, carrying beautifully wrapped gifts, excited to celebrate what they believe is a strong, loving marriage. They have no idea they're about to witness the most spectacular public exposure of betrayal in Chicago's social history. The ballroom looks absolutely stunning. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across round tables draped in ivory linens, each centerpiece featuring white orchids and gold accents. A small orchestra is setting up in the corner, preparing to play the same classical pieces that accompanied our wedding reception 5 years ago. The open bar is fully stocked with top-shelf liquor, and the catering staff is arranging an elaborate dinner that costs more than most people's monthly salary. Everything is perfect, exactly as my husband Michael insisted it should be. He spared no expense for this celebration, claiming he wanted to show everyone how much our marriage meant to him. Now I understand he was actually throwing an elaborate party to celebrate 5 years of successfully deceiving me while sleeping with my best friend. In my purse, I have a flash drive containing 2 years' worth of evidence. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts, even video footage from the private investigator I hired 3 months ago when I finally admitted to myself that something was fundamentally wrong with my marriage. Tonight, during what's supposed to be my toast, thanking everyone for celebrating our love, I'm going to project every piece of evidence onto the large screen Michael had installed for our romantic slideshow. I graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern University with a degree in business administration. I'm a senior marketing director at Harper & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious advertising agencies. I own my own condo in Lincoln Park, drive a car I bought myself, and have an investment portfolio that would surprise most people. I built a successful independent life before I met Michael, and I'll rebuild an even better one after tonight. Michael comes from Chicago's old money elite, the kind of family that has buildings named after them and sits on museum boards. When we met at a charity gala 6 years ago, I thought I'd found someone who valued intelligence and ambition as much as I did. He was charming, successful, humble, and seemed genuinely interested in my career and goals. What I didn't realize was that he was also a master manipulator who saw my success as a useful accessory to his own image. My best friend Jennifer has been in my life since college. We were roommates at Northwestern, maid of honor at each other's weddings, godmothers to each other's children. She was the person I called when I needed advice, support, or just someone to laugh with over wine and terrible movies. She knew every detail of my marriage, every insecurity I had about my relationship with Michael, every moment of doubt I'd ever expressed about whether we were truly compatible. For 2 years, she used that intimate knowledge to help Michael hide their affair from me. She knew exactly what to say to reassure me when I suspected something was wrong. She knew how to redirect my attention when I started asking uncomfortable questions. She even helped him plan romantic gestures for me that would throw me off the scent of their betrayal. The betrayal began, according to the evidence I've gathered, during my business trip to Los Angeles 18 months ago. I was gone for a week, working on a major client presentation that could have made my career. While I was putting in 16-hour days to secure our financial future, Michael and Jennifer were in our bed, in our home, mocking my trusting nature and planning how to continue their affair indefinitely. 3 months ago, something shifted in my marriage that I couldn't ignore anymore. Michael became distant and secretive in ways that felt completely foreign to our relationship. He'd always been somewhat reserved emotionally, but this was different. He seemed to be living a separate life that didn't include me, even when we were in the same room. It started with small things. Phone calls he'd take in another room, claiming they were work-related, but speaking in hushed, intimate tones I'd never heard him use in professional conversations. Unexplained absences during lunch hours that he'd explain away with vague references to client meetings or gym sessions. A sudden interest in his appearance that included new cologne, a personal trainer, and clothes that were more stylish than his usual conservative business attire. Jennifer, meanwhile, became oddly unavailable during the same time periods when Michael was being secretive. Our weekly lunch dates started getting canceled at the last minute due to work emergencies or family obligations that never quite added up when I asked for details. She'd also developed an annoying habit of steering conversations away from Michael whenever I tried to discuss my marriage concerns with her. The first concrete evidence came when I accidentally picked up Michael's phone instead of my own after a dinner party at Jennifer's house. They were identical models in similar cases, an honest mistake that revealed a text message thread that made my blood run cold. The messages weren't explicitly sexual, but they contained an intimacy and familiarity that was completely inappropriate for a married man and his wife's best friend. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. These dinners with S are getting harder to get through when all I want is to touch you. I know, baby, but we have to be careful. She's starting to ask more questions about my schedule. Maybe it's time to tell her the truth. I hate sneaking around like this. Not yet. Let me handle her. I know exactly how to keep her distracted. I stared at those messages for 10 minutes, sitting in my car outside Jennifer's house while Michael helped her clean up from the dinner party we just attended. The casual way they discussed deceiving me, the pet names, the references to my questions about their schedules, it all painted a picture I couldn't deny anymore. That night, I hired a private investigator, Marcus Thompson, a former Chicago police detective who specialized in matrimonial investigations. I gave him carte blanche to document everything about Michael and Jennifer's relationship, no matter how painful the truth might be. For 3 months, Marcus followed them, photographed them, recorded their conversations when legally possible, and compiled a dossier that was even more devastating than I'd imagined. They weren't just having an affair. They were in love. Deep, passionate, all-consuming love that made their deception of me feel like a cruel game they were playing for their own entertainment. The evidence showed hotel room receipts for afternoons when they told me they were in separate meetings, photos of them kissing in restaurant parking lots across the city, always careful to choose places far from our usual haunts. Video footage of Jennifer entering our apartment building on days when I was traveling for work, staying for hours before leaving, looking disheveled and satisfied. Most devastating were the recordings Marcus had obtained using legal surveillance techniques, conversations where they discussed their plans for the future, including Michael's intention to wait until after our anniversary party to ask for a divorce. They'd already chosen the apartment they wanted to rent together and had discussed how to divide our assets in a way that would minimize Michael's financial losses. "She'll probably get the condo," Michael said in one recording, his voice carrying the casual tone he might use to discuss the weather. "But my lawyer says I can protect most of the investment accounts if we handle this right." "What about your family?" Jennifer asked. "Won't they be upset about the divorce? They never really liked her anyway. Too ambitious, too independent. They'll probably be relieved that I'm finally settling down with someone more appropriate." Listening to that conversation, I realized that our entire marriage had been built on lies. Michael had never respected my ambition or independence. He'd simply tolerated them until he found someone he considered more appropriate. Jennifer, meanwhile, had spent 2 years pretending to be my closest friend while actively working to destroy my marriage. The anniversary party had been Michael's idea, pitched to me as a romantic gesture to reaffirm our commitment to each other. He'd insisted on inviting everyone important in our lives, claiming he wanted to publicly celebrate our love. Now I understood he was planning to use the party as a farewell tour before blindsiding me with divorce papers. For the past week, I've been planning my own version of a farewell tour. I've compiled all of Marcus's evidence into a multimedia presentation that tells the complete story of their betrayal. Photos, video clips, audio recordings, and documentation that proves they've been planning to destroy our marriage for months. I've also quietly contacted a divorce attorney and initiated proceedings to protect my assets. While Michael thinks he's going to surprise me with divorce papers after the party, I've already filed first, ensuring that his attempts to hide money and manipulate the settlement will be unsuccessful. Tonight, during the party he planned as his grand finale, I'm going to give our guests the truth instead of the performance they're expecting. When I stand up to give what everyone thinks will be a heartfelt toast about our beautiful marriage, I'm going to show them exactly what kind of man Michael really is and what kind of friend Jennifer has been. I've spent 5 years being the perfect wife to a man who was counting down the days until he could replace me with my best friend. I've spent 2 years confiding my marriage concerns to the woman who was actively sabotaging my relationship. I've been living in a reality show where everyone else knew the script except me. But tonight, I'm taking control of the narrative. Instead of being the naive wife who gets blindsided by divorce papers, I'm going to be the woman who refused to let liars and cheaters write the ending to her story. The valet is approaching my car, assuming I'm here for the party. I check my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. I'm wearing a red dress that makes me look powerful and confident. My hair and makeup are flawless, and I'm carrying myself with the dignity of someone who knows her worth. In 30 minutes, I'll walk into that ballroom and greet our guests with the grace and charm they expect from the woman they think is celebrating her happy marriage. I'll smile and accept their congratulations, pose for photos, and play the role of the loving wife right up until the moment I decide to stop acting. Michael is about to learn that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of his life. Jennifer is about to discover that betraying the person who trusted her most comes with consequences she never considered, and everyone in that ballroom is about to witness what happens when someone pushes a strong woman too far. 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life looked like. I was Mrs. Michael Richardson, wife to a successful investment banker, living in a beautiful condo in one of Chicago's most desirable neighborhoods. Our social calendar was full of charity galas, dinner parties, and weekend trips to Michael's family's estate in Lake Forest. I had a career I loved, friendships I treasured, and what I believed was a solid marriage built on mutual respect and shared goals. My daily routine was predictable and comfortable. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., spend an hour at the gym in our building, then head to Harper & Associates, where I managed marketing campaigns for some of Chicago's biggest corporations. I specialized in brand rehabilitation, helping companies recover from public relations disasters by crafting authentic narratives that rebuilt consumer trust. The irony of my expertise wasn't lost on me after I discovered the truth about my marriage. I was a professional at spotting deception and manipulation in corporate messaging, but I'd been completely blind to the lies being told in my own home. Michael worked at Goldman Sachs, managing investment portfolios for high net worth clients. His typical day involved meetings with wealthy families who trusted him to grow and protect their fortunes. He was known for his integrity and discretion, qualities that made him popular with clients who valued privacy above everything else. We'd met at a children's hospital charity auction, where I was representing my agency as a sponsor, and he was attending as a member of the hospital's board of directors. He'd approached me during the cocktail hour, complimenting my presentation about our firm's pro bono work with nonprofits. We talked for hours about our shared interest in philanthropy and our similar values around using our professional success to help others. The courtship was traditional and romantic. Dinner dates at Chicago's finest restaurants, weekend trips to his family's properties, introductions to his social circle that included some of the city's most influential families. He proposed on Christmas Eve at his parents' estate, surrounded by family and friends who seemed genuinely delighted that he'd chosen me. The wedding was everything I'd dreamed of since childhood. 300 guests at the Chicago Cultural Center, a reception that was featured in Chicago Magazine's society pages, and a honeymoon in Tuscany that lasted 3 weeks. I felt like I was living in a fairy tale, married to a man who seemed to adore me and excited about the life we were building together. Jennifer had been my maid of honor, giving a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. She spoke about our friendship, about how perfect Michael was for me, about how she'd never seen me happier than I was on my wedding day. Every word was delivered with apparent sincerity and genuine affection. Now I know she was already planning to steal my husband, even as she stood at our wedding altar celebrating our marriage. The first 3 years of our marriage were genuinely happy, or at least I thought they were. We bought the condo together, combining our assets and building what felt like a partnership in every sense of the word. Michael was supportive of my career, attending work events and celebrating my professional victories with genuine enthusiasm. We entertained frequently, hosting dinner parties for our friends and family that were always perfectly orchestrated and genuinely enjoyable. Jennifer was a regular guest, often bringing dates we'd try to set her up with permanently. She claimed she was too focused on her law practice to settle down, but enjoyed being part of our married couple's social circle. I trusted Michael completely and never questioned his fidelity or commitment to our marriage. He traveled occasionally for work, had regular guys' nights with his college friends, and maintained an active social life that didn't always include me. I supported his independence because I valued my own, and I never suspected that his freedom was being used to deceive me. Jennifer and I maintained the close friendship we'd had since college, talking almost daily and seeing each other at least twice a week. She was the person I called when I needed advice about work, family, or marriage. She knew my insecurities, my dreams, my fears about whether I was good enough for Michael's wealthy, established family. She also knew exactly how to exploit those insecurities to keep me distracted from the truth about what was happening in my marriage. Looking back, there were warning signs I dismissed because I trusted the people I loved. Michael became more interested in his appearance, started working out more seriously, and began buying clothes that were more fashionable than his usual conservative style. When I complimented these changes, he'd say Jennifer had been giving him advice about updating his image for work. Jennifer, meanwhile, started canceling our plans more frequently, claiming work emergencies or family obligations that seemed to occur with suspicious regularity. When she was available, she seemed distracted and eager to end our conversations quickly, unlike the hours-long talks we'd always enjoyed. My marriage began showing subtle cracks that I attributed to normal relationship evolution rather than evidence of betrayal. Michael became less communicative about his daily experiences, responding to my questions about work and friends with vague generalities instead of the detailed stories he'd always shared. Our physical intimacy decreased significantly, which he explained as stress from work and general fatigue from our busy schedules. Most significantly, he started picking fights about issues that had never bothered him before. My long work hours, my close relationship with my family, my tendency to plan our social calendar without consulting him first. These arguments felt manufactured and disproportionate to the actual issues, but I attributed them to growing pains as we adjusted to married life. I should have recognized that he was creating distance and conflict to justify his emotional withdrawal from our marriage. Instead, I worked harder to address his complaints and be a better wife to a man who was already planning to leave me. The second major warning sign came during a dinner party at our condo last fall. I'd invited 6 couples for an elaborate Italian meal I'd spent days preparing, including Michael's business partners and their wives, Jennifer and her latest boyfriend, and my brother with his new girlfriend. Throughout the evening, I noticed Michael and Jennifer having what appeared to be private conversations during moments when other guests were distracted. They'd move to the kitchen while I was serving wine, or step onto the balcony while everyone else was in the living room. When I asked Jennifer later what they'd been discussing, she claimed Michael had been asking for advice about a surprise he was planning for our upcoming anniversary. That night, after our guests left, I found Michael cleaning up the kitchen with unusual thoroughness. He was washing wine glasses by hand instead of putting them in the dishwasher, paying special attention to 2 glasses that hadn't belonged to our usual set. When I asked about them, he said he'd borrowed them from Jennifer because we'd run short, but I'd counted our glasses before the party and knew we had enough. More troubling was a lipstick mark on one of the glasses in a shade I'd never seen Jennifer wear. When I mentioned this, Michael became irritated and accused me of being paranoid and controlling. He said I was imagining problems where none existed and suggested I was becoming too suspicious for my own good. That argument was our first serious fight about trust, and it established a pattern where Michael would deflect my concerns by making me feel like I was being unreasonable. Whenever I noticed something that seemed off about his behavior or Jennifer's availability, he'd turn the conversation into criticism of my personality or judgment. 2 months later, I started having vivid dreams about Michael and Jennifer together. Not sexual dreams, but intimate scenarios where they were sharing secrets, making plans, and excluding me from conversations about my own life. I'd wake up feeling anxious and confused, unable to shake the feeling that my subconscious was trying to tell me something my conscious mind wasn't ready to accept. When I mentioned these dreams to Jennifer during one of our increasingly rare lunch dates, she laughed and suggested I was probably just stressed about work and projecting my anxiety onto my personal relationships. She recommended I consider therapy to address what she called my trust issues and need for control. I realize now that she was gaslighting me, using her knowledge of my psychology to make me doubt my own instincts. Every time I sensed something was wrong, she'd have a reasonable explanation that made me feel foolish for being suspicious. Every time I expressed concerns about Michael's behavior, she'd remind me how lucky I was to have such a successful, attractive husband and suggest I should focus on being grateful instead of looking for problems. The final months before I discovered the truth were marked by an escalating sense that I was living in a reality that didn't quite make sense. Michael's explanations for his schedule changes never quite added up, but they were plausible enough that questioning them made me feel paranoid. Jennifer's unavailability coincided too perfectly with Michael's mysterious appointments, but pointing this out made me sound like I was keeping surveillance on my own friends. I started second-guessing my own memory and judgment, wondering if I was becoming the kind of wife who imagined infidelity where none existed. The people I trusted most were telling me that my concerns were unfounded, that I was lucky to have the life I had, that I should stop looking for problems and start appreciating what I had. What I didn't understand was that they were working together to make me doubt my own sanity. While I was questioning my judgment and trying to be a better wife, they were laughing at how easily they could manipulate me into ignoring the evidence of their betrayal. The truth finally became undeniable on a Tuesday afternoon in March when I left work early with a migraine and decided to go home to rest instead of powering through the day. As I approached our building, I saw Jennifer's BMW pulling out of the underground garage, which struck me as odd since she'd told me that morning she had back-to-back client meetings all day. I decided to check our apartment to make sure nothing was wrong, thinking perhaps there had been a maintenance emergency that required Jennifer to help with something. Using my key, I found the condo unusually warm and filled with a scent that wasn't quite right, a combination of Jennifer's perfume and something else I couldn't identify. The living room showed subtle signs that someone had been there recently. Couch pillows were arranged differently than I'd left them. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink that hadn't been there that morning, and I found a hair elastic on the coffee table that belonged to Jennifer but shouldn't have been in our apartment. Most damning was what I found in our bedroom. The bed was made, but not in the precise way our housekeeper always arranged it. The comforter was slightly askew, and there were indentations on both pillows, despite the fact that Michael had left for work before me that morning and typically only slept on one side. On Michael's nightstand, I found a receipt from lunch at a restaurant downtown, dated for that day, and showing a bill for 2 people. According to the timestamp, he'd been at lunch during the exact time period when Jennifer claimed to be in meetings and when her car had been in our garage. I sat on our bed holding that receipt, finally accepting what I'd been trying not to see for months. My husband and my best friend were having an affair, and they'd been using our home as their meeting place while I was at work. That evening, I confronted Michael directly, showing him the receipt and asking him to explain why Jennifer's car had been in our garage during his lunch hour. Instead of confessing or even showing guilt, he became angry and defensive, accusing me of spying on him and violating his privacy. He claimed the receipt was from a business lunch that had been moved at the last minute, and suggested that Jennifer had probably been visiting the neighbor who lived in our building to discuss a legal matter. When I pointed out that we didn't have neighbors who were Jennifer's clients, he accused me of being obsessed with controlling his every movement. The fight escalated until Michael stormed out of the apartment, claiming he needed space to think about whether our marriage could survive my paranoid behavior and lack of trust. He returned 3 hours later with flowers and an apology, saying he'd been stressed about work and shouldn't have reacted so strongly to my concerns. But his apology felt scripted and insincere, more like damage control than genuine remorse. When I asked again about the receipt and Jennifer's presence in our building, he gave vague, contradictory explanations that raised more questions than they answered. That night, I lay awake next to my sleeping husband and made the decision to hire a private investigator. I couldn't continue living with the constant sense that I was being lied to, and I needed concrete evidence to either confirm my suspicions or put them to rest permanently. 3 days later, I met with Marcus Thompson in his office near the Chicago River. A former detective with 20 years of experience investigating matrimonial cases, Marcus had a reputation for thorough, discreet work that would hold up in court proceedings. I hired him with a mixture of hope and dread, still wanting to believe that my marriage could be saved if I could just understand what was really happening. I thought perhaps Michael was having some kind of midlife crisis that was affecting his behavior, or that Jennifer was going through personal problems that were making her act strangely. I never imagined that Marcus would uncover evidence of a systematic, long-term deception that had been carefully planned and executed by the 2 people I trusted most in the world. For 3 months, Marcus documented every aspect of Michael and Jennifer's relationship using legal surveillance techniques and public records research. He followed them to restaurants, hotels, and private residences across Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. He photographed them together in intimate settings and recorded conversations when they were in public spaces where privacy couldn't be expected. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Michael and Jennifer were deeply involved in an emotional and physical affair that had been ongoing for almost 2 years. They met regularly during work hours, spent nights together when I was traveling, and had developed elaborate systems for communicating without leaving traces on their primary phones or email accounts. More devastating than the sexual betrayal was the emotional intimacy Marcus documented. They weren't just having an affair. They were in love and had been planning a future together that included ending my marriage and starting a life as a couple. Marcus's final report included over 300 pages of evidence, including photos, video footage, audio recordings, financial records, and communication logs. The documentation showed that Michael and Jennifer had opened a joint bank account, had toured apartments together, and had consulted with attorneys about divorce proceedings. They'd planned every detail of how to end our marriage in a way that would minimize Michael's financial exposure and maximize their chances of staying together. Jennifer had even researched whether dating her best friend's ex-husband would affect her standing with the Illinois Bar Association. Reading that report was like discovering that my entire life for the past 2 years had been a lie. Not only were the people I loved most betraying me, but they were documenting their betrayal and planning their future with the same attention to detail that most people put into vacation planning. The most painful revelation was a series of conversations Marcus had recorded where Michael and Jennifer discussed their strategy for managing me during the transition period. They'd agreed that Jennifer would continue being my confidant so she could monitor my emotional state and redirect my suspicions. Michael would continue being affectionate and attentive to keep me from seeking outside validation or support. They turned my trust in them into a weapon they were using to control and manipulate me while they built their new life together. After receiving Marcus's report, I spent a week processing the evidence and planning my response. My first instinct was to confront them immediately, to scream and cry and demand explanations for their cruelty. But as I read through the documentation, I realized that they'd already planned for that scenario. They discussed how to handle my eventual discovery of their affair, including strategies for making me appear unstable or vindictive if I tried to expose them publicly. They'd counted on my emotional response to discredit any evidence I might present, and had prepared narratives that would cast them as the victims of my controlling and paranoid behavior. Instead of giving them the emotional confrontation they were prepared for, I decided to respond with the same cold calculation they'd used to betray me. If they wanted to play strategic games with my life, I would show them what a real strategist looked like when she decided to stop playing defense. I spent 2 weeks consulting with divorce attorneys, forensic accountants, and legal experts to understand exactly how to protect my interests and expose their deception. I learned about Illinois divorce law, about asset protection strategies, and about the legal implications of adultery in marriage dissolution proceedings. I also began planning the anniversary party revelation that would serve as my public response to their private betrayal. If they wanted to use social manipulation and public perception as weapons against me, I would show them how those same weapons could be turned against them. The anniversary party had been Michael's idea, but I enthusiastically embraced it as the perfect venue for my own purposes. A gathering of everyone important in our lives, including family members, professional colleagues, and social connections who had supported our marriage and believed in our happiness. Michael wanted to use the party as a celebration of our marriage before blindsiding me with divorce papers. I decided to use it as a forum for revealing the truth about what our marriage had actually been for the past 2 years. For the past month, I've been preparing for tonight with the same meticulous attention to detail that Michael and Jennifer used to plan their affair. I've compiled all of Marcus's evidence into a multimedia presentation that tells the complete story of their betrayal. I've rehearsed my speech dozens of times, timing it to last exactly long enough to present the key evidence before anyone can stop me. I've also taken concrete steps to protect myself legally and financially. I've filed for divorce citing adultery and emotional cruelty, with Marcus's evidence supporting every claim. I've secured my personal assets and ensured that Michael won't be able to hide money or manipulate the settlement process. Most importantly, I've prepared myself emotionally for the aftermath of tonight's revelation. I know that exposing their affair publicly will end my marriage, my friendship with Jennifer, and probably several other relationships with people who will feel uncomfortable taking sides in such a dramatic situation. But I also know that continuing to live with their lies would have destroyed me slowly and completely. By choosing to expose the truth publicly, I'm reclaiming control over my own narrative and refusing to be the victim of their manipulation any longer. Tonight, when I stand up to give what everyone thinks will be a loving toast to our marriage, I'm going to show them exactly what they've been celebrating for the past 5 years. Not a loving partnership, but an elaborate deception that was designed to make me complicit in my own betrayal. The valet has opened my car door, and I can hear the orchestra beginning to play inside the ballroom. It's time to make my entrance and begin the performance that will end with the truth instead of more lies. I've spent 5 years being the perfect wife to a man who is planning to replace me with my best friend. Tonight, I'm going to show everyone exactly what perfection looks like when it stops trying to please people who don't deserve it. As I walk through the entrance of the Fairmont Hotel, I can see through the ballroom doors that the party is already in full swing. Guests are mingling with cocktails, admiring the elaborate decorations, and waiting for Michael and me to make our grand entrance as the happy couple celebrating 5 years of marriage. They have no idea they're about to witness the most spectacular public divorce announcement in Chicago social history. Michael appears at my side, looking handsome in his custom tuxedo and flashing that charming smile that once made me believe in fairy tales. "You look absolutely stunning," he says, taking my arm with practiced ease. "Are you ready to celebrate our beautiful marriage?" I smile back at him with equal charm and practiced ease. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. And for the first time in months, I'm telling him the complete truth. The ballroom doors open, and we make our entrance to enthusiastic applause from 150 people who think they're celebrating love and commitment. The orchestra plays our wedding song as we move through the crowd, accepting congratulations and posing for photos like the perfect couple we've always appeared to be. Jennifer approaches us early in the evening, looking radiant in a navy blue gown that perfectly complements her blonde hair. She hugs me warmly, tells me how beautiful I look, and makes a comment about how lucky I am to have such a devoted husband. The performance is flawless, just as it has been for the past 2 years. "I'm so happy for you both," she says, her voice carrying apparent sincerity. 5 years of marriage and you're still so obviously in love. It gives me hope that I'll find something like this someday. I look her directly in the eyes as I respond. Oh, Jennifer, I think you've already found exactly what you're looking for. Tonight, everyone is going to understand just how much you value the relationships in your life. She looks confused by my phrasing, but before she can ask for clarification, other guests approach to offer their congratulations. For the next hour, I work the room like the accomplished professional I am, making conversation, posing for photos, and playing the role of the grateful wife celebrating her happy marriage. At 8:30 p.m., exactly as planned, the catering staff begins serving dinner while the orchestra transitions to background music. Michael stands to address our guests, tapping his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. Sarah and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to help us celebrate 5 incredible years of marriage, he begins, his voice carrying across the ballroom with confidence and warmth. When I look around this room, I see the people who have supported us, encouraged us, and shared in the joys of our life together. The guests applaud appreciatively, many of them dabbing at their eyes as they think about their own marriages and relationships. Michael continues with what sounds like a heartfelt tribute to our partnership, our shared values, and our bright future together. Marriage isn't always easy, he says, his voice taking on a more serious tone. It requires honesty, trust, and commitment, even when those things are difficult to maintain. Sarah and I have been blessed to find in each other the kind of partnership that makes all of life's challenges worth facing together. As he speaks about honesty and trust, I catch Jennifer's eye across the room. She's watching Michael with an expression of pure adoration, completely absorbed in his words about marriage and commitment. She has no idea that in 10 minutes, everyone in this room will know exactly how much honesty and trust have meant to both of them. Michael concludes his toast by asking everyone to raise their glasses in celebration of our marriage and our continued happiness together. The room erupts in applause and calls of cheers as 150 people drink to the success of our relationship. Then Michael sits down and nods to me, indicating it's time for my response. This is the moment we've planned where I'll give my own toast, thanking our guests and sharing my feelings about our marriage and future together. I stand slowly, smoothing my red dress and picking up my champagne glass with a steady hand. The room falls quiet as everyone prepares to hear the loving wife's response to her husband's beautiful tribute. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, I begin, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent acoustics. Michael's words about marriage being built on honesty and trust really resonated with me, because those qualities have been so important in shaping our relationship. I pause to take a sip of champagne, using the moment to make eye contact with several people around the room, including Jennifer, who is watching me with a smile of anticipation. 5 years ago, when Michael and I exchanged vows, we promised to be faithful to each other in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for richer and poorer. We promised to honor and cherish each other above all others. I pause again, letting those words sink in. Tonight, I want to share with you how those promises have been kept. I signal to the audiovisual technician, who dims the light slightly and activates the large screen that's been set up for our romantic slideshow. The first image appears, a beautiful wedding photo of Michael and me, looking young and happy and completely in love. This is how our story began, I continue, as more wedding photos cycle through on the screen. 2 people who thought they'd found their perfect match, surrounded by family and friends who believed in their happiness. The images shift to photos from our early years of marriage, vacation pictures, anniversary dinners, holiday celebrations with both our families. The guests are smiling, enjoying what they think is a sentimental trip through our relationship history. For the first 3 years, I believed we were living the fairy tale we'd promised each other on our wedding day. Michael was everything I thought I wanted in a husband: successful, charming, from a good family, respected in our community. The photos on the screen continue to show our happy moments, but I can see some guests beginning to sense that something is different about my tone. My voice is steady and controlled, but there's an undertone they can't quite identify. I trusted Michael completely, I continue. When he said he was working late, I believed him. When he said he needed space to decompress from work stress, I gave it to him. When he started picking fights about my career and my friendships, I worked harder to be the wife he seemed to want. Now, the photos are shifting to more recent images, but these aren't from our personal collection. The first surveillance photo appears on the screen. Michael and Jennifer kissing in the parking lot of a downtown restaurant, clearly taken with a telephoto lens. A collective gasp goes up from the audience as people realize what they're seeing. Several guests actually stand up to get a better look at the screen, while others pull out their phones to record what's happening. I also trusted my best friend Jennifer completely, I continue, my voice remaining steady as more surveillance photos cycle through. When she canceled our plans because of work emergencies, I believed her. When she gave me advice about my marriage problems, I thought she had my best interests at heart. When she told me I was being paranoid about Michael's behavior, I thought she was trying to help me save my relationship. The photos now show Jennifer entering our apartment building during times when I was at work, time-stamped and dated to prove the frequency of her visits. Then, hotel receipts showing Michael's credit card being used to pay for rooms during his supposed business meetings. Jennifer has gone completely pale and is gripping the edge of her table so hard her knuckles are white. Michael has started to stand up, clearly intending to stop my presentation, but my father-in-law puts a firm hand on his shoulder and pushes him back into his seat. What I didn't realize was that Michael and Jennifer have been having an affair for the past 2 years. I announce clearly, as audio begins playing through the ballroom's sound system. It's one of Marcus's recordings of their conversation about planning their future together after my divorce. She'll probably get the condo, but my lawyer says I can protect most of the investment accounts if we handle this right. Michael's voice fills the ballroom, unmistakably his own words. What about your family? Won't they be upset about the divorce? Jennifer's voice responds. They never really liked her anyway. Too ambitious, too independent. They'll probably be relieved that I'm finally settling down with someone more appropriate. The ballroom erupts in chaos. People are standing, shouting, some trying to leave, while others are pulling out phones to record everything. Michael's mother is crying openly, while his father looks like he wants to physically attack someone. My own parents, who I'd prepared for this revelation earlier today, are watching with expressions of sad but determined support. Jennifer finally finds her voice. Sarah, please stop this. You don't understand the situation. Let me explain. I cut her off without looking in her direction. I understand perfectly, Jennifer. I understand that while I was confiding in you about my marriage problems, you were sleeping with my husband. I understand that while I was working to save my relationship, you were helping him plan my divorce. I understand that you used every detail I shared with you about my insecurities to help him manipulate me more effectively. More evidence continues playing on the screen. Photos of them apartment hunting together, bank records showing their joint account, and email exchanges discussing their strategy for managing my emotional state during the transition period. Michael finally manages to stand up despite his father's restraining hand. Sarah, this isn't the way to handle this situation. We can work this out privately, like adults. I turn to face him directly for the first time since beginning my presentation. Like adults? Michael, adults don't spend 2 years planning to destroy their spouse's life while pretending to love them. Adults don't document their betrayal in detail, while their wife works to save a marriage that ended before she even knew it was in trouble. The final piece of evidence appears on screen, a video recording of Michael and Jennifer in our apartment, clearly intimate, and obviously taken during one of their afternoon meetings while I was at work. Everyone in this room was invited here tonight to celebrate 5 years of what you believed was a loving marriage. I continue, addressing the entire assembly. Instead, you've been celebrating 5 years of me being successfully deceived by the 2 people I trusted most in the world. I pick up my champagne glass and take a sip before delivering my closing statement. Michael wanted to use tonight's party to say goodbye to our marriage before surprising me with divorce papers. Jennifer wanted to continue being my best friend so she could monitor my emotional state while building a life with my husband. I pause to look around the room at the faces of people who have known us for years, who attended our wedding, who believed in our happiness. Some look angry on my behalf, others appear to be in shock, and a few seem uncomfortable with the public nature of this revelation. I decided to give you all the truth instead of the performance they had planned. Michael and Jennifer are welcome to build whatever life they want together, but they'll do it without using my trust and naivety as building materials. I set down my champagne glass and pick up my purse, preparing to leave the ballroom with the same dignity I'd entered with. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what honesty and trust really look like when they're applied to marriage and friendship. As I walk toward the exit, the ballroom behind me continues to buzz with shocked conversations, arguments, and the sound of chairs scraping as people decide whether to stay or leave. I can hear Michael calling my name, probably preparing some explanation or apology that he thinks will salvage the situation. I don't turn around. There's nothing he could say that would change what I now know about him, and nothing I need to hear to move forward with my life. Outside the hotel, the Chicago night air feels crisp and clean against my skin. I take a deep breath and realize that for the first time in 2 years, I feel completely free. No more wondering if I'm being paranoid, no more second-guessing my instincts, no more trying to be perfect for people who were never worthy of the effort. My phone starts buzzing with text messages and calls from guests at the party, friends who want to check on me, and family members offering support. I turn off the phone and drop it into my purse. Tonight is about ending one chapter of my life, not immediately beginning the next one. I drive home to my condo, the one I'll keep in the divorce settlement along with most of our other assets, thanks to the evidence Marcus gathered and the prenuptial agreement Michael insisted on that actually protects me more than him. Tomorrow, I'll start the process of rebuilding my life without liars and manipulators, but tonight, I'm going to open a bottle of expensive wine and toast my own courage. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the conference room of Chicago's most prestigious law firm, signing the final papers that officially end my marriage to Michael Richardson. The divorce settlement is everything my attorney promised it would be: favorable, comprehensive, and designed to ensure that Michael's attempts to hide assets and manipulate the process were completely unsuccessful. I get the condo, the majority of our investment accounts, and a monthly alimony payment that reflects both Michael's earning capacity and the adultery that ended our marriage. Michael gets his student loan debt, his expensive car payments, and the knowledge that his reputation in Chicago's financial community has been permanently damaged by his public exposure as an adulterer and liar. My attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s who specializes in high-asset divorces, slides the final document across the table for my signature. "This is one of the most clear-cut adultery cases I've handled in 20 years, she tells me. "The evidence your investigator gathered made it impossible for Michael's team to argue for anything other than a settlement that heavily favors you." Michael isn't present for the final signing. His attorney represents him, a tired-looking man who has spent 6 months trying to minimize the damage from Michael's spectacularly public affair. According to my lawyer, Michael has moved to New York and taken a position with a smaller investment firm, probably the only company willing to hire someone with his recent history. Jennifer's law practice has also suffered significant consequences from the anniversary party revelation. Several high-profile clients terminated their relationships with her firm after videos of my presentation went viral on social media. She's reportedly moved to Denver and joined a corporate law firm where her personal life is less likely to affect her professional reputation. Their affair, which seemed so passionate and worth sacrificing everything for, ended approximately 6 weeks after my public exposure. According to mutual acquaintances who keep me updated despite my requests that they not, the relationship couldn't survive the social scrutiny and professional consequences of their betrayal. They destroyed 2 marriages, multiple friendships, and their own reputations for an affair that lasted less than 2 months after it was no longer secret. The love that seemed worth risking everything for evaporated as soon as it was no longer forbidden and exciting. My new life in Chicago is simpler but infinitely more satisfying than the elaborate social performance I maintained during my marriage. I've kept the condo but redecorated it completely, removing every trace of Michael's presence and creating a space that reflects my own taste rather than our combined aesthetic. I've been promoted twice at Harper & Associates and am now a senior partner with my own team of junior executives. My work focuses on crisis management and reputation rehabilitation, skills I developed through personal experience that make me uniquely effective at helping clients navigate public scandals and rebuild their professional standing. My relationship with my family has never been stronger. My parents, who supported my decision to expose Michael and Jennifer publicly, are proud of the strength I showed in refusing to be victimized by their deception. My brother, who always had reservations about Michael's character, has told me repeatedly how relieved he is that I escaped what he calls a marriage built on lies. I've started dating again, carefully and selectively, with clear boundaries about what I will and won't accept in a relationship. The man I'm currently seeing is a literature professor at Northwestern University who values honesty, independence, and emotional intelligence above social status or financial success. He knows the complete story of my marriage and divorce, and his response was exactly what I needed to hear. Anyone who would manipulate your trust like that doesn't deserve a place in your life. I'm glad you chose yourself over their comfort. 8 months after my anniversary party revelation, I received an unexpected phone call from a literary agent in New York who had seen videos of my presentation and wanted to discuss a book deal. She believed my story could help other women recognize manipulation and betrayal in their own relationships and find the courage to respond authentically rather than trying to preserve relationships that were already destroyed. The book, titled Choosing Truth Over Comfort, A Woman's Guide to Recognizing and Responding to Betrayal, was published 10 months later and became a bestseller in the self-help and women's empowerment categories. I've been invited to speak at conferences, universities, and women's organizations about recognizing deception, trusting your instincts, and refusing to accept less than you deserve. The most surprising aspect of my post-divorce life has been discovering how many women have similar stories about trusting people who were systematically deceiving them. At every speaking engagement, I meet women who recognize themselves in my experience and found the courage to address their own situations honestly. 1 year after my wedding anniversary revelation, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a domestic violence prevention conference in Chicago. The organizers wanted someone to talk about emotional manipulation and psychological abuse in relationships that appear successful from the outside. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of social workers, therapists, and survivors of various forms of relationship abuse, I realized how far I'd traveled from the woman who had tried so desperately to save a marriage that was already over. Betrayal is not just about infidelity, I told the audience. It's about someone using your trust as a weapon against you. It's about people who know your vulnerabilities and exploit them for their own benefit. It's about realizing that someone you love has been treating your relationship like a game where you're the only player who doesn't know the rules. After my presentation, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "I've been making excuses for my husband's behavior for 3 years," she said. "Listening to your story made me realize that I deserve better than someone who lies to me daily and then makes me feel crazy for questioning him." 6 months later, she sent me a photo of herself at her own divorce finalization, smiling and holding up her decree with pride. Her note said simply, "Thank you for showing me that choosing truth over comfort isn't selfish. It's survival." Today, 2 years after my anniversary party, I'm preparing to move to a larger condo in the same building, one with enough space for a home office where I can write my second book and continue the consulting work that has grown out of my speaking engagements. The new place has floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan and a second bedroom that I'm converting into a library. My life is entirely my own creation now, built on authentic choices rather than other people's expectations. I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am and what I want, without having to consider whether my decisions will please someone who doesn't have my best interests at heart. The woman who stood at that anniversary party 2 years ago, devastated by betrayal, but determined to control her own narrative, has evolved into someone who helps other women recognize their own worth and find the courage to demand better treatment from the people they love. My revenge against Michael and Jennifer was never about destroying them. It was about refusing to be destroyed by them. It was about choosing truth over comfort, authenticity over performance, and self-respect over the approval of people who were never worthy of my devotion. And that choice, difficult as it was in the moment, has given me a life that is infinitely more valuable than any marriage built on lies could have ever provided.